tragedy reveals a compelling vision. It reminds you of the things that matter most. We need to be called out when we're taking things for granted. Most entrepreneurs are visionary people. They're growth junkies.
Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Remington Ramsey. It is show number 100. I've got Bobby Wright, everyone's favorite, back on the show. Bobby, we're going to talk about some of the things we've learned in the past 100 episodes, but it's a pretty epic day, wouldn't you say?
100. That's a lot.
That's like almost 100. That's amazing. Yeah.
3 digits.
I broke it down. So I sent you this text the other day. I was like, you know what? We got to do something special for the 100th. We like doing recaps and talking about what we've learned from certain specific episodes. And I broke it down. I don't know what made me choose these 3 categories. The show is pretty deep. We have a bunch of different types of different types of people that made it big in real estate and outside of real estate. And I broke it down into 3 categories, and I picked a couple people, some of my favorites. I know you did as well. And we specifically wrote down what we learned from immigrants who've been on the show, what we learned from best-selling authors who've been on the show, and what we've learned from survivors who've been on the show. Bobby, I'm going to kick it to you. Who's someone that stands out in one of those categories?
Oh, survivors right away. I think about my good friend Arnold DeSena and what he's been through, and just seeing him lately on social media deliver the results that only he believed he would deliver. And this is like 3 years later. 3 years ago, terrible accident. He was on his motorcycle. It sent him flying 50 feet, broke almost every bone in his body. They said he wouldn't live. I think he actually passed away a couple times.
Oh, wow.
And definitely listen back to that episode, by the way, if you haven't listened to it. But, you fast forward to today, and Arnold he's got it's not even a chair. It's actually a stand-up. It's not a wheelchair. It's just a stand-up motorized
technology.
Yeah, and he's holding himself up. And so that's the next step. He's been in therapy all the time. Every time I talk to him, he's just like on this like relentless pursuit to achieve this goal. And it's a goal that most of us take for granted. And it's to be able to use your arms and legs. Yeah. And it's just so inspiring to me when we talk about what we learned from survivors. I mean, it's a reminder for me on perspective. And, I feel like we've talked about this before. I feel like tragedy reveals a compelling vision. It reminds you of the things that matter most in life. It clears everything out of the way that doesn't matter, that we, for some reason, allow to take up space in our mind. Yeah. And you see a person like Arnold, or I'll talk Samantha Toth, right? Who, as a young child survived the Cambodian genocide and was too young to realize what was actually going on in her life. But you listen to her story and you hear about her hardworking parents and opening a restaurant and their love for day-old donuts. Like, I'm never going to forget that with Samantha.
Man, I forgot about that part too. Like, the episode's so loaded. I mean, so Samantha was one of my favorites when it comes to survivors, because she talks about how vivid the memory is of her only toy when she was growing up in poverty in Cambodia being rolled up balls of mud that she used as marbles. I mean, these people would hide jewelry in their kids' clothes, not her parents, but it was so common that they would hold kids down at gunpoint searching them. And that's the kind of life that she came into, becoming not only a top producer in Sacramento, but I believe the president of the Women's Council of Realtors. I mean, just what a story.
And what's next? Yeah. What's next for her, right? Like, I think about it also just reveals this, like, it's I want to say it's like a humble arrogance and just this ability to do the daily mundane things that, just call it like it is, that, oftentimes people who grew up not having to work as hard for things, or not having to have not being blessed with something that helps remind them what truly matters. You just don't see the day-to-day effort like you do typically. And that doesn't go for everybody, but we certainly something I know I've learned from survivors in this regard is just clear picture, clear vision, know what needs to get done, and they do it every day, and they're here for something greater.
Well, we'll put the show notes. We'll put the episodes that we're talking about in the show notes so you guys can find the hyperlink really easily. But Arnold DeSena, I know he's a personal friend of yours. But Bobby, honestly, your episode was one of my favorites, talking about the 20-pound vest, the weighted vest. And that stems from a very a relatable story to a friend of yours passing that kind of changed your perspective. And I think if you can give like the 2-minute rundown of that, I didn't tell you I was going to ask you about that, but it relates to Arnold DeSena's story. So on the episode, you talked about the reason why you put on a 20-pound vest on random times, random days. Can you share that?
We need to be called out when we're taking things for granted. That's the best way to put it. It all started when my wife and I were moving homes, and I was being a wuss, and I was complaining. And for whatever reason, I looked up. I was in our basement, and I looked up, and my weighted vest was it's like it had eyeballs, and it was looking right at me. And it was like, "Put me on, because you're taking all of this for granted." And so I listened, and now that's become something that it's kind of like a self-accountability call out when I catch myself taking things for granted and needing the reminder that I'm a little bit stronger than I'm acting right now. And I ought to maybe commit to something a little bit harder so I can get back on track.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love that perspective. That reel blew up, by the way. You went viral. Congrats. All right. So I also talked about what we learned from immigrants. And the reason I chose this one is because there's this underlining theme of anytime we have a top producing realtor specifically who is an immigrant coming from a different country, first generation. And the underlining theme is this: they all wonder why Americans don't take advantage of the opportunity that's in front of them. I'm trying to remember the name. I'll figure out by the end of the episode, of the guy out in Seattle who just struggled when he first got here, but once he figured it out, it's like almost like a cheat code. We had Colin Mullane on from representing NAR, one of the higher ups at NAR, representative, talking about how hard it is to sell a home in Ireland, the structure, the difference in how quickly you can change your stars just within real estate in America. We had Parminder Singh from the Colorado, one of the Colorado markets, who lived in a bunch of different countries across Europe and the Middle East, and now within a couple years with real estate, realized his dream. And in the episode, he's actually driving his Lambo within like 5 years of selling real estate. Just stupid stories of success. But my parents were my dad was a pastor when I was growing up, and we would host missionaries. And I remember that from my childhood. I remember missionaries coming over and the same thing, talking about just how much poverty they see, what the zero opportunity in these other countries. And yet here we are in America, and the number one question we can't get out of our heads is, why aren't we taking advantage of that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I've been lucky to spend some time in other countries, and not near as much as I would have liked to, but really the theme that we hear, especially in some underdeveloped countries, is that this is the land of opportunity, the land of the free, right? Where people look to America, and should they ever get the opportunity to be here, that they will be put in an environment where they can achieve anything that they believe to be possible.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between that feeling far away and the dream of getting to a place like that, and somebody who just grows up in it. And I don't know if you say that obviously not all of us are like that, right? There are certain things that provide a level of perspective for someone who grew up in America that that gives them the same mentality that we've seen in some of our folks that just so happen to be immigrants as well. But that's my big takeaway from anybody who has become a top agent that we've featured or that I've just met across the country is their perspective is different. And really that's the word that I arrive at. It's a different perspective. It's a different appreciation, almost as if they are fully aware of the opportunity that's in front of them and that they've got in many cases, a different relationship with time and how they spend their time.
Sure. Well, the last category that I wrote down, and I kind of chose certain categories that kind of represent what our podcast has become in the last 100 episodes. I mean, early on, when we were trying to figure it out, I think most podcasts don't make it past one episode. And then the next barrier is like 21 episodes. If you make it to 21 episodes, you're in the top like 1% of surviving podcasts.
That's true?
So,
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we're in the top 1%, and now flash forward to the 100th episode, we've officially hit the top 5% of current active global podcasts, which is a huge feat for us, and that's across all the boards, not just real estate. That's across all podcasts. And so what we've learned is there's a couple different types of shows that we have. We'll have top producing agents from our markets. They've been featured. They are on the cover of their local market. Some of them are going to be speaking at our national event in September, RP Elevate, rplevate.com if you want to learn more about that. And then we also have a couple shows that are just kind of what we've learned from, the last decade of running this magazine, whether it's branding, sales, leadership, and we riff on that. And then the third category is we actually interview best-selling authors and speakers and keynotes within the real estate space and outside of it. And the two that stood out when I was writing this was Rory Vaden, who is speaking in September, by the way, wrote author of Take the Stairs, also wrote Procrastinate on Purpose, also wrote Be the Buffalo, which is a children's book, which is big for Bobby. Bobby loves Buffalo.
I love children's books too.
Yeah, you do. And Jay Papasan, who wrote The One Thing, was on the show. And the common theme between Rory and Jay, the quote that I wrote down for Rory was, "Trust must happen before transaction." And we get into the fact that he was saying that a lot of people want to double their business and they use social media and they think, if I could just get 1 million followers, if I could get as many eyeballs on this, and that's going to translate. But he says it's not the width of your followers, it's the depth of your following. He was talking about the fact that there's people that hire him that have more followers than him, but he capitalizes and makes more money off of his sphere because he has a better relationship and is deeper with his content. And so what relates to Jay in that same vein is Jay's whole episode, besides talking about becoming the best-selling author of The One Thing, he talks about building your cathedral. And the quote, I believe, is something to the effect of, if you set yourself on fire, people will come from all over to watch you burn. And which is kind of like an aggressive quote. But what he used that to talk about is the fact that if you build your cathedral, a lot of people try out to go out and get the business, like one at a time, go out and get your business. But if you create something that's so special that people are coming to you because they want to be a part of it, that's creating not only your cathedral, but a community. And so those two best-selling authors, we just kind of got off on that topic, not just on what their books were about, but really how to build a business from yourself, starting as one and growing it out. And I think if you look at the makeup of our listeners, Bobby, you have top producing agents. You have some agents who are new, starting on a team that look up to the top agent. You have vendors who are anywhere between someone who's super successful, has 500 plus agents that are referring them, to someone who started yesterday with a painting company and has one realtor that they like. And so, but what we all have in common is this bone of entrepreneurship. We are, we've got the sickness, we've got the illness, and we're trying to figure this out. So I felt like from the best-selling authors, those are two episodes that really stood out to me in terms of how to grow a business the right way. Any thoughts on those?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with those. Definitely Take the Stairs is a big influence in my life over the years. Writing a book is hard. And I know you just came out with yours, Rem, and big congratulations there. It's a great book. I've
Thanks.
read it. Thanks for the shout out in there. That's
That's right.
not that's not why I love it. It's actually a good read. Um, but writing a book is hard. But also that same, you say the entrepreneurship bone. Most entrepreneurs are visionary people. They're growth junkies. They're always looking for ways to think differently about things. They're thinking of ways to inspire and grow their teams.
Hmm.
And therefore, that's why you see some of the best real estate agents refer to so many authors and books and coaches, and they're looking outward for things to help them grow. And that's something that we get when we bring authors on this podcast. And they coincidentally, a lot of those folks end up with a lot of speaking engagements and a lot of coaching opportunities within the real estate industry because of that. So it
Yeah.
only makes sense that we have certain authors on our podcast, and they totally understand and appreciate what it takes to be a top agent.
Yeah.
So,
Well, Real Producers has been such a fun journey in itself before we even started the podcast. I mean, we were growing it one franchise at a time. We're now in 130 markets, and we've started to go to these national shows. You and I, Bobby, have done 2 or 3 conferences just internally for our own guys, our own franchisees for the last 10 years, but then also going to other real estate functions. I love conferences. I love going to them. I love the people that I meet. I love the tips and tricks that I take home. My business always has an uptick when I come home from literally any conference, because I put my heart and soul into those things. We just got back from NAR not too long ago, a couple months ago, where we bumped into a handful of agents that were on the show. I remember bumping into Tommy Choi, who was on the show early on, the guy who
Samantha was there.
camps out for 6 hours to get an autograph. Who else?
Samantha was there. Samantha Todd.
Oh, Samantha Tav, yep, came up and said hey. So I want to cap off the show by kind of talking about your excitement around RP Elevate. I know we've talked about it on the show quite a bit because we're leading up to it. It's the first one. We're bringing all the markets together. 130 markets will be represented in Dallas, September 29th and 30th. What are you looking forward to most about RP Elevate?
I envision the moment where this is kind of selfish. Hopefully that's okay. I envision the moment where I'm standing probably in the back of the room and just looking around and seeing all of the people that we have coming to this conference. And we tried to have a national event. The pandemic decided we should take a couple years and launch it in 2025, and that's what we're doing. But there was excitement around it back then. I mean, this event is a part of the beginning story that we wrote for this brand, for these top agents, for these preferred affiliates that these agents refer to us. And it just so happens that the timing is absolutely perfect, that there's a stronger voice for those who sustain good businesses in real estate. And, we're coming off a year where a lot of people have decided to no longer remain in this industry, or to maybe go try something else while they're doing this. And the top producing agents remain. And many of them have been through more than one trying time in the market, right? So they understand what this takes. And, I'm just so excited to get finally all of those, or as many of those individuals as we can, in a room and hear from one another, watch them collaborate. Just like any other conference, one of the greatest things about it is the growth that happens outside of the general session and outside of the break room or breakouts, and just relationships that we know will form, and collaborations that will come from an event like this. And it's only the beginning. It's only the first one. It's only going to get better.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest differentiator. You hit the nail on the head, is who's in the room. I mean, if you look at all the other national events that happen, or bigger events that happen, they're typically limited by that particular brand. If you think about R4, Mega Camp, and then you get into like Inman or NAR, like those are big, and there's a lot of great content, but in terms of who's in the room, if you talk about the quality of agent, if you're looking for like Relo or just rubbing elbows with the best of the best, they will be at RP Elevate. And that's what I'm looking forward to the most, is just creating this elite magnitude of an event where we bring the thunder from the stage, not just with keynotes, but like the panels. I mean, these are the best panels within real estate. These are the best of the best in their field, giving up their time to share with the world. That's why I love real estate. That's why I love real producers. That's all the time we got. Anything else, Bobbert?
100. Here's the 150.
All right, man. 150 coming your way. Next 50 episodes. If you want to influence who we have on the show or what we talk about, email us at podcast@realproducersmag.com. And if you want more information on RP Elevate, go to rpelevate.com. We'll see you next time.